Preppers versus unprepared. In this world, there are dangers. Some people understand this and do what they can to prepare. It doesn't mean that no harm will befall them. It just simply means at a minimum, they understand that life is full of risks and surprises. Then there are those others. Not to sound demeaning, but the people who have either through the durability of the bubble they live in or the sheer denial that bad things happen even when you pretend that they don't exist. Alright folks, it's preppers versus the unprepared in this video. This is the Urban Sentinel, and let's get into it. If you're new to the channel, welcome and thank you for watching. I appreciate it. Our world as a whole is in a state of upheaval. It doesn't mean every corner of the planet is in the middle of a fight for survival. Some places are, but what it does mean is that the relatively calm and orderly rhythm of society is breaking down faster as time passes. Each day goes on, we're bombarded with information about natural disasters, man-made disasters, biological threats, economic hardships, environmental crises, political discord, civil unrest, hot wars, cold wars, cyber wars, world wars, all of this swirling in a blender with the top off, just making a mess all over the place. Being a prepper is to understand that you can't plan for every contingency and that there are events far beyond your control. But we as preppers know that just sitting by and waiting for the end, simply accepting the fate that's what's deemed to be inevitable by other people, isn't in our nature. On the other side of the fence, however, there are folks that may even acknowledge the dangers in this world, but refuse to do anything about it, refuse to take an active level of participation in their own survival. 2022 is winding down. There's only a few months left. But the myriad of calamities that have gone on thus far and probably will continue on through the rest of this year are building up into what 2023 is going to be. It's a sort of foreboding premiere to what this upcoming year is going to be about. When many of the breaking news headlines occur and they shake up that stable routine that people have, that mental balance that people are trying to maintain, depending upon what the perceived threat is or what the actual threat is, can influence a small group or a large population. Preppers plan and look at possible outcomes for previous existing facts, historical things, things that have a direct context to certain things, but they also look at the behavior and the patterns and the trends and look forward and seeing what could possibly come out the other side of it. The unprepared, in contrast, see these incidents as one-off. Even when the same type of incident occurs over and over again, it's almost ignored, like, well, that's only happened once or twice, or it wasn't that bad the last time, or we're still here, so it shouldn't be too bad the next time this happens. Problems with that is often you find those type of people on preparedness channels like mine and others, and usually in the comments, they're the first ones that start off with fear-mongering, or it can't happen, or the government will have a plan. That's always my favorite one. The tensions between these two groups, between preppers and non-preppers, we've seen exist, just as an example, in the last 2-3 years when the pandemic was really kicking off and people were all around the world starting to realize that something's going on and they need to start picking up the pace a little bit. The conflicts occur when you have preppers like myself who would go in just to top off the supplies that we already had. You know, an extra case or two of water, a couple more bags of this, a couple more boxes of that, versus the person giving the dirty evil eye because their shopping cart is filled with 12 to 15 bottles of Diet Coke. You choose what you do, and you get the outcome that you get. Many of you have experienced that in the early days of the lockdowns, through the panic, through the tension, through the constant back and forth of do this, not that, and then do that, not this. Not all, but a sizable portion of the folks that saw a need to store up extra supplies were developed and brought out from that situation. They themselves were not an individual or a type of person to think of themselves as a prepper, but that assisted them in moving in that direction to realize that they have to start taking care of themselves and they have to do things actively now to be ready for something tomorrow. Now, the end of this year will bring another return to that type of behavior. I personally hope that many more people have learned their lessons from the last few years and are more prepared. And the rest of us as preppers, we're still continuing to plan, to prep, and to organize ourselves and become ready for what could be coming up next. It's been stated already, lots of agencies, lots of experts, lots of business people, that the existing crop yields, everything that was planted earlier this year that's coming to harvest now, between the droughts and the flooding, there's going to be a lower yield of crops. There's going to be a lower output for poultry, fish, for beef. Many of those food industries are basically holding on to what they have, struggling to get by. They're not going to be able to bring the large volumes of food that we once relied on. And it's not to say that it's going to be a complete shutoff. It's going to be a definitely reduced volume and, of course, increased price. And not all of that is directly tied to, in the U.S., our current rate of inflation. A lot of it simply comes down to a rancher might have gone from 20,000 head of cattle and had to kill off, 15,000 because not enough grass to feed, not enough water to feed, and therefore he had to start thinning the herd, literally thinning the herd out. So an influx of new meats and new chicken and things like that coming onto the shelves now, people may say, hey, our supermarkets are full, we've got plenty of stuff right now. But then come October, November, you're going to see that start to thin out. And by January, February, when that rancher only has 3,000 viable cattle that are large enough to make a decent profit from, he's still going to have to then sell them for a higher cost because there's only 3,000 left. Now, with all of the other things going on globally, again, the same thing. It all starts spreading out and everything is interconnected. It may take a little while to see the exact effects of one action in another country on our country and from our country to another country, but everything moves along and eventually it starts to coalesce and squeeze everything into a little pot of, just trouble bubbling up and waiting to spill over. Preppers as a whole are cautious. It's that caution that leads us to take actions to avoid the dangers. And part of that is looking at these situations now, realizing that there's a pattern, seeing where the trends are going, finding that flow within everything and seeing where we can slip in, get what we need to get, do what we need to do, and then try to move out of the way or at least move into the background so we're not up front and, sitting at the front end of the vehicle, as it were, when it's getting ready to crash head on into a brick wall. The unprepared, unfortunately, many of them will still be in the same situation that they constantly place themselves in. When the period comes where they realize that there's more trouble, that there's more threats, that there's more danger, that there's a crisis, they start looking and pointing fingers at preppers, saying we're the reason for it, building upon the myth, the fallacy that preppers preparing is what causes the shortfalls, what causes the restrictions, and what causes the lack of goods and services. Quite the opposite. It would be no different on any other day, but when it's spun where because we do this, the action and reaction result is this, and it's quite the opposite. I've said these before, and a few months have gone by, and I've looked at everything that, from my point of view, based upon everything that's out there, we really are in the next upswing for a new series of what the hell is happening next. That's the easiest way to put 2023, is it's going to be another year of what the hell is happening next. And I don't want to sound like a broken record, but it is really important that you stay vigilant, you keep up on your supplies, you keep up on your gear, you keep up on your training, you keep working your plans and working out your different scenarios for what you can best handle and what you think within your region, and then the area a little bit around you, and broadening it out farther of what you think might happen and how those things are going to affect you. Anyway, catch you in the next one.